Once upon a time, there was an ocean called Tethys Sea here. Now only the river Gandaki is coming from the far end point of Tibet. The glacial river flows across the Himalayan kingdom of Nepal. Here, the places where Himalayas took birth. Two plates from north and southern end, the Tibetan plate and Indian plate, collided according to geologists, and the sediments under the Tethys Ocean started to grow up into a specific geometric figure. And this figure started to be called the Himalayas, the mighty mountains with the highest peak in the world, Mount Everest. The waters of Gandaki is still the witness of this wonderful land. On the other side of the Himalayas, on the other side of the Tethys Himalayas, the original Himadri Himalayas, the northernmost point of Himalayas, are arranged with habitation. From the time immemorial, this habitation had been formed by the peoples along the cliff of the mighty Himalayas. The small villages, hamlets, crops, gardens, and all those required for the livelihood of the human beings have been arranged day in and day out in this Himalayan kingdom. This is the place where the most vital arc of the geological Himalayas exists. But peoples on the other side where the civilization grew up do not know the mystery of their place. We are watching the other side of the Tibetan Plateau and the places where the monsoon rain comes and make this vegetation, and had been making this vegetation from the time immemorial. Again, on the other side of the Tibetan Plateau, on the Tethys Himalayas, the mighty Himalayas seems to be still under construction. Here, trees are rarely found. Only the snow-covered peaks rises up at the evening, clearly, brightly, and sharply. A few houses and the residents live there, and their maintaining of livelihood is very hard. It is nearly 455 kilometers from the capital Kathmandu. The snow-covered peaks only gives the signs that there is another part of Himalayas with vegetation behind this treeless place. The habitat places where the peoples live have arranged their crops and fields with their own design. Cutting the cliff of the Himalayas step by step, the steppe cultivation had arisen in very ancient era. The peoples cut the steps along the cliffs, grow crops there, because rainfall is not scanty. But the real mystery of Himalayas stays in the Tibetan Plateau region. The geometric figure of the sediments hidden under the ocean, Tethys Ocean, still under construction. By the tremendous pressure from the both plates from north and south, the Tibetan and Indian plates, when collide with each other, then the sediments are pressured and started to grow up, raise their heads over the ocean. And this takes just the shape of this geometric figure, just like an incomplete L. But on the other side, no sign of these growing Himalayas are seen. Here, the typical mountain villages, mountain hamlets are there. Peoples live there with their own daily lives. Construction of roads, sometimes muddy roads, along the cliff of the Himalayas give them their regular livelihood. The grasses are there, the trees are there, fencing of the peoples are there to maintain and grow their own crops in the Himalayan kingdom of Nepal. The bushes are sometimes unknown, sometimes are from specific species we see. In the far of the landscape, we see some hamlets with small villages, with small houses. Every houses had triangular roof so that they can shade the rainwater. This habitation is grown by the monsoon. Monsoon is a very important climatic phase of these places. But when there is no monsoon, it is only seen the snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas. The northernmost ranges of the Himalayas are behind the treeless cliff of the Tethys portions of Himalayas. This place is called Jomsom, a wonderful picturesque town, but still primitive. With respect to the livelihood, with respect to the lifestyle, and with respect with the existence of the peoples in these places, are all were seen, nothing, only the Tethys Himalayas. From among the cliffs and the corners of these places, the snow-covered peaks at evening rises up its heights as temperature falls down. And on the other side, the monsoon-washed places make a picturesque landscape of growing crops. Paddies are always grown up with the winds. Other trees, mountainous trees, are also seen in the foothill of Himalayas and also in the upper portions of this mighty mountain. Sometimes they are very much important for getting their own culture reflected in their own sense and own origin. A Nepalese culture is a very much enriched from the time immemorial and had been enriching day in and day out. Nepalese peoples are basically Hindus. They worship gods, and the existence of gods directly comes from Indian culture. The tribal peoples from the very beginning and the tribal peoples from the time immemorial had been converted by Indianization of the place. So, the movement of their heads, the thoughts of their heads, the movements of their physique at the time of uttering the hymns for the god had been very much considerable from the very beginning of this culture, of this civilization. A small hut is always not so much well arranged, but in the Himalayan cliff we can see that these small wooden houses inside, peoples always sing the hymns of the god and always think that their existence are due to God and it will wash away if there is no God. The Hinduism is uttered by the hymns of the Vedic poems. It has been translated into Nepalese and always has been the very much important for the peoples of the Nepal. Sometimes the small veranda of this cottage are well arranged for making their livelihood easy. The roofs are made with tins and woods. Alongside the walls are made of mud. Bamboos are used somewhere to give the strength of the hut to hold the roof in the different corners of the world. And the fencings are also there to maintain their own privacy, not only for their regular livelihood, but also for their own sake. Tibetan Plateau and South Indian Plate collided millions of years ago. After it, Himalaya grew up. The clear signs of this geometric figure are still visible in the Tibetan Plateau region along the Tethys Himalayas. The very delicate shapes of these sediments once upon a time under Tethys Sea has been very much important for the geological study. The sands are still on the upper layer of the rocks are growing, and these folds are getting older, getting arisen every moment to make the Himalayas most mighty in the world. The layers of the rocks had given the birth of some species of the grasses. This grass species has speciality, but the rocks are layered with some granules of sands, which sands are still visible, and if rubbed, it comes off with the finger. One after one layers, as it were, under the seabed of the Tethys Ocean has now been out of water. Though the incident is millions of years of old, but in this place, that is the most important arc of the Nepalese geology, Himalayas is still growing and is seen visibly, clearly. From the far point, the Tibetan Plateau region, the Tethys Himalayan region, is still visible as only rock without any vegetation. Some vegetations are there due to the remaining outflow of the water from the monsoon. The rocks are scattered here and there. And still we want to say again a second time that if we reach there, if we reach that place, we can feel the mighty Himalayas is still under construction. Sometimes clouds are felt to have covered the total areas. The contrast between the greenery and non-greenery are clearly visible here. The greeneries are sometimes very much well maintained in a specific domestic atmosphere. Some alpine trees are seen along with some unknown species trees. And with all these things, the peoples go for their education to gain the knowledge about their country, about their culture. This knowledge and cultures are injected from the primary level of the school. The school of Nepal are rarely seen in the Tibetan Plateau region, but it is sometimes overpopulated in the greenery area of the Himalayan cliffs. Students study just beneath the windows wherefrom the mighty Himalayas are clearly visible. The style of their sitting, the style of their study, the style of their prayer, the style of their assembly are really unique. Teacher comes here to mix up with the peoples, to teach the peoples regarding the Nepalese culture, the Nepalese upliftment, development, and the mighty Himalayas. They want to make them understand that existence of Himalayas can never be discarded from their life. The complex and annex of the school, those are secondaries and higher secondaries, have given another dimension to the civilization along the green fields of the Himalayas. So the difference between these two places, in one side of the cliff of Himalayas and another the Tethys Himalayas, are clearly visible as two separate entities in terms of geological existence. Government of Nepal have tried to develop their education system and buildings of schools. The injection of the play school idea along with the sense of nature have been in the curriculum of the Nepalese syllabus in the government-run schools. Peoples also enjoy their lives with games, with studies, with mixing up with the teachers and other peoples around them. Kids always study with their game. The greeneries, trees, and all other existence in this area had been a considerable amount from the time immemorial. The roofs of the school buildings are with a shape of triangle. Sometimes they are taught the co-curricular activities, especially the educational aspect, music, culture, dance. Everywhere they just want to manifest the reality of life with the relations with Himalayas. After the assembly is over, the real study starts. But the performance of the art and culture, the performing art, has always been a very much important in Nepalese culture from the very beginning. So the students from the very poverty-stricken peoples come here in this primary school run by the government of Nepal and study there to gain the feelings of the mighty Himalayas and their own culture. It is notable that the crude Western culture had not been entirely injected into the school curriculum. Nepal has tried to maintain it. Sometimes a special domestic atmosphere of a Nepalese cliff house has its own uniqueness. Made of woods, decorated with bamboos, mosquito nets, beds, and quilts. Along with the nature outside the window, peoples live here. The dresses of the Nepalese peoples are generally saris and others. Sometimes they make some places to sit, to make chat, and to feel Himalayas from the courtyard of their houses. So it is very much feelingful for the Nepalese people to touch the head of the wonderful God they think running the world with his own supremacy. The greeneries along the cliff around the Nepalese house are well maintained. The decoration of the houses, the decoration of the planting fields, and the decorations of other regular amenities are seen in this part of Himalayas. But where the Tethys has vanished, no sign of these civilized symbols are visible there. Time passes away as the moments, and the domestic atmosphere of a Nepalese cottage also starts changing. Foreign peoples come sometimes to stay over here to play with the nature, to feel the nature, to feel the Himalayas. The unique identity of the Himalayas have a special aspect which is studied by the foreign students also. The kitchen of a domestic atmosphere are filled up with modern amenities if it is along the cliff of the greeneries of the Nepalese culture. The courtyard is filled up with the guests from Europe and other Western countries. But on the other side of the Himalayas, where exists this wonderful vacated without vegetation mountain region, that is Tethys Himalayas, are still alive. Small buildings which have been made up, actually made for the offices of the governments, and rarely one or two schools here and there. Everywhere in the summertime also, the peaks are covered by the snow, and in the evening, these snows are brightened than the early moments. As the time passes, the snows gets more volumed. The endless places and endless fields of this plateau region are filled up with the tremendous valley wind. Evening comes down, clouds passes over these places. Snow-covered peaks come out, and the bluish glow of the world touches the eyes of the feelingful personalities here in the another side of the Nepal. Nepalese peoples have their own unique culture. They have their own performance, they have their own cultural performance, they have their own placing of their own thoughts and actions when it comes to the context of a marriage. Peoples of Nepal make arrangements of their programs, their functions, their rituals in their marriage ceremony. Bridegroom comes according to Hindu rituals and takes up the bride to his own home. But the system is not totally based on Hinduism. The ancient bond religion of Tibet played a vital role here. The peoples of Nepal residing here are more or less similar to the adjacent Tibetan peoples and Tibetan culture. Flowers, dresses, uniforms, and rituals are very much enriched from the time immemorial. But the life of the Nepalese culture still latent in the flow of river. It is such a place where the mountain flow of the river are seen. The flow from the origin from the glacier, the river comes out and washes away the in-between field and in-between places, making canyons. Still the water are transparent and only filled up with the granules or the rocks here and there. These rocks are found in the both parts of the Himalayas. The northern part, which is adjacent to the Tibetan Plateau and is called Tethys Himalayas, had also these wonderful rivers, along with another part, that is the greenery part of the Himalayas, Himadri Himalayas, had these wonderful and unique presentations of the river flow. All of these rivers are generally originated from the glacier. Somewhere in the glaciers of the Green Himalayas, and the main rivers and the tributaries come from the peak of the glacier from the Tibetan Plateau. And the sign of this wonderful river is Kali Gandaki. This Kali Gandaki is generally meaningful for its blackish water. This blackish water turns into a blue glow under the blue sky without any pollution. The river comes from the far inland of Tibetan glacier, flows across Himalayas, and makes the backbone of the Nepalese economy. In the very ancient times, this river had not existed. Just particularly this place is the place of Tethys Himalayas. The ranges seen on the both banks of the Kali Gandaki river are still showing the sign of the formation of the Tethys Himalayas. The folds are very new, and Himalayas is called the most young mountain of the world. The flows of Kali Gandaki is considered very sacred to the Nepalese Hindu peoples. The flow of this glacial water sometimes abolishes along with the ground plains, but plains are here formed with the granules of the rocks here and there. Habitation is rarely seen, and vegetation also rarely seen. Some plants are there seen are not just like the plants which are available in the greenery part of the greatest Himalayas. Road along the Kali Gandaki rivers go to the wonderful town of Jomsom, which is the farthest point of the Nepalese countries. The flow of these Kali Gandaki rivers had never given any sediments to grow plants here and there or to grow crops. A few peoples tried it, and with very hard toil they grow crops for their regular livelihood. Kali Gandaki has been the backbone of this culture from the time immemorial, and just touching the Tibetan Plateau. The feature of this Tibetan Plateau is the valley wind. A few cattle are being reared there, but the tremendous flow of wind always moves the heads of the trees here and there in the endless field of this Tethys Himalayan region. The endless field is surrounded by the fold mountains, the ancient sediments from the bedrock of the oldest Tethys Ocean. And these trees are moving their heads to inform us the untold and hidden history along the flow of the Kali Gandaki in this endless granule-full ground which has gone towards Tibet. Peoples are rarely seen here to live, but the existence of the fencings show the existence of military area along with some people's habitation. The soils are here just looks like the sands, and when it comes the context of the evening, then it gets darkened and darkened, but the history of Kali Gandaki still flows from the topmost glacier of the Tibetan Plateau across the Himalayan region. A few fields and the domestic atmosphere are seen along the line of the Gandaki, and roads are made along the river to reach that interior place. But the beauty of the nature, existence of the plantations of unique kind, and the existence of this ancient faded history is always seen, always seen along the cliffs of the places. The Tibetan Plateau and the Nepalese Himalayas had a specific arc here according to geological study. And this study shows that this was originally the Tethys Ocean. If it would not be an ocean, then these great Himalayas could not have been seen as under construction. The ancient salt traders came through this light in the sunset times of the great lake of Pokhara, another picturesque place of Nepal. It is very far from the Jomsom. It is very far from the town of the northernmost point of Himalayas. This lake shows the existence of such a place where peoples had their own life latent in it. The waves on the lakes show that this was the place from the very beginning when the peoples from the Central Asia and the Tibetan Plateaus first came with Buddhism to the another part across the Himalayas to the Himalayas here to make their own habitat and to make their own livelihood along the coast of the lake. It is a very relief moment for us to watch the picturesque beauty of this lake, but the common Nepalese peoples had the life latent in it, sunk in it. The small hamlets have its uniqueness. In Jomsom and towards the far end of the Tibetan Plateau, the small hamlets are made of especially with the rocks, stones, somewhere woods. The roads are always covered with the woods, and woods are stored whenever required will be used for that. The long way of this route are very congested, but still a cleanliness and uniqueness of this area is rarely seen. In the remotest corner of this Tethys Himalayas, those peoples who have been living from the very old decade had made it. But on the another side, the existence of the monsoon are still seen. The cloud passing over is the sign of monsoon or is the sign of the moving clouds with the water droplets. This cloud is passing from one side to another, will be going towards the cliff of the Himalayas, will collide with it, otherwise it will go upwards and will get colder. The droplets will be heavier and will be poured down as the rainfall along the cliff. Sometimes for these clouds, Nepal had to face severe floods here and there. But the existence of the monsoon, momentum of the clouds, still latent in the lifestyle and in the heartbeat of the Nepalese culture. On the other side, on the Tibetan Plateau region, where the fold mountains of the Tethys Himalayas are seen, peoples have also tried to make their habitat. A small school is there. On the endless part of this Tibetan Plateau region along the cliff of the Tethys Himalayas, habitats have been tried to be grown up. Sometimes peoples come here to loiter, but these are not favorable for him with respect to conditions of their livelihood. This great places is always filled up and filled with the tremendous valley wind, especially in the morning and in the noontime. The valley wind has always as an importance in the Nepalese culture. These are considered as a god and the call of the gods to the peoples. So the habitation has been rarely seen. Cattle are also rarely seen. Only the cliff of the fold mountains still growing are seen there, with the movements of the all leaves of the trees, the alpine trees, just like calling the history, calling the hidden history, and calling the mixed culture of Nepalese and the Tibetan peoples. The granules of these places, clouds of this place, and the curves along the cliffs of this treeless mountain becomes the witness of the very, very ancient formations of these geological places called Trans-Himalayas or TETHYS Himalayas. The soils are soft, peoples are soft, the places is soft, and the mighty Himalayas is also soft and is growing older and older. Still it is considered the youngest mountain in the TETHYS Himalayas.